Welcome into TYT's The Conversation. It's your host, Adrienne Lawrence, and I am joined by Mr. Robert Greenwald. He's the president of Brave New Films and the director of Racially Charged, America's Misdemeanor Problem. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure to be with you.
Yes, so Robert, Racially Charged, a documentary. It's about the racial history and modern discrimination of the American misdemeanor system. What more can you tell us about this documentary?
Well, the documentary was inspired by a book by Alexandra Nadapoff, who's a professor at Harvard, in which she dug into the facts about, in the United States of America, there are between 12 and 13 million people who are in the carceration system as a result of misdemeanors. Walking, spitting, jaywalking for the most part. The most minor of infractions that frankly, middle class white people do not get arrested for, do not get cited for. Over and over again, the statistics are extraordinary, how these misdemeanors, going way back to the time right after the Civil War, Reconstruction, up through and including today, misdemeanor laws, formerly known as the Black Codes, are used for oppression, they're used for suppression, they're used for profiting, they're used for bringing people into the system, and then the system works its horrors on many people.
Absolutely, it does. And as a lawyer, to those watching, I can tell you that a misdemeanor is generally something for which the punishment is less than a year in prison, whereas a felony is just the opposite, as in a year or more in prison. And so you think of a misdemeanor as something very nominal, very small, something that would not take away your livelihood or opportunity to flourish. But from what it seems, Mr. Greenwald, very much that is not the case in the system. And why do you think that is?
Well, one of the things that Alexandra says in the book, and we talk about it in the film, which is based on, the book is based on human stories, it's based with a series of experts. She says over and over again, no misdemeanor is minor. What does that mean? It means for somebody who is struggling or somebody who doesn't have significant means, being cited for a misdemeanor, whether it's putting you in jail itself, putting an ankle bracelet on you, fining you, it helps destroy, literally destroy significant parts of your life. Home, job, transportation, sometimes even losing the ability to see your children. And so that system has grown and grown and grown. And in certain areas, I mean, we saw it with Ferguson, where it's a system now designed to provide income so that the system can keep going. We were in the middle of production and the horrors of police murders rose to another level. And we realized, and maybe other folks may have known this, but certainly I didn't and many of the team didn't, that misdemeanors were very, very often the gateway for police murders. Whether it was a counterfeit bill, or whether it was a charge of loitering, whether it was a charge of trespassing. Those were ways that the police entered into people's lives, and unfortunately, all too often, there were horrible results, sometimes murder.
And when you say murder, are you saying murder of the police officers themselves, or are you talking about the individuals who've been arrested?
The individuals who've been arrested or being charged or being accused, remember, nobody's been convicted, often, too often, resulting in the death of those individuals. And we also saw in the middle of production with the outbreak of COVID, in which we all separated and worked from home as we all are now, that people, you literally might be arrested, let's say, for trespassing. Now you're in jail, but you're in jail where there are almost no precautions taken around COVID, right? We've seen the statistics, the number of people who got infected, the number of people who died. So a trespassing violation could turn into a death sentence. And we interviewed a man, it's in the film, and he talked about the terror and the video, the films of how close together people were, the conditions under the best of circumstances that were borderline inhuman. You add COVID to it, and it becomes really truly a nightmare. And that's one of the reasons all of us at Brave New Films, a small nonprofit, we're so passionate about making the film, about getting the film out and having it available for free all over the country. Our goal is to have 1,000 screenings by June 30th. People can go to Brave New Films, they can sign up, they can get a study guide for school, they can get a reflection guide for a faith screening, they can do it in their home. If it's safe and appropriate, they can do it with advocacy groups. So there's a tremendous opportunity to help tell this story. And it's really systemic, right? If you get, we talk about systemic racism, systemic oppression, capitalism run wild, and this misdemeanor system, this infrastructure really exemplifies all of those elements.
Absolutely, it does. And I think people do not necessarily take this into account when they think of criminal justice reform or change, but it's so impactful because, as I believe you said, up to 13 million people a year get caught up in the system, mostly poor or people of color. And also it's just almost a form of abuse that feeds into capitalism. So how, I guess, does your documentary Racially Charged really shine a light on this issue?
Well, we do it in a couple of ways. One, and I was so struck by this in Alexandra's book and in the research, where we went back to the Reconstruction era and we found all these stories, all these cases, and then we lined them up with people today. It was almost, and you'll see it in the film, word for word, what happened right after Reconstruction. People were arrested, people were fined, people were locked up, and then today. And we have a few, 4 or 5 amazing people in the film whose lives have been torn asunder because of misdemeanor. I believe they're going to be on the show, versions of the show over the next period of time. So we took those personal stories, we put them at the center of the film, because one of the things I always talk about at Brave New Films, what we try to do is put a face on policy. Those were the faces. And then we have a series of experts, really eloquent, smart, thoughtful people who can take us through the historical pattern, who can talk about what black codes meant, how they were put in place in order solely and exclusively to arrest and oppress and stop black people from the forward progress they were making after the Civil War. So the historical connection is one element. The personal stories, past and present, is the other element. And then what we're doing now is we're having screenings all around the country with many of the really smart, thoughtful district attorneys, where you can see there can be a difference. This doesn't have to wait for somebody in Washington, D.C. This can happen now with good district attorneys. It's local, city, state, county. So there's lots that we can do where we can become active, we can become involved. Hopefully we can use the film, whether you're on YouTube or Twitter or TikTok or Instagram stories, we have it there so that people can help inform, arouse, and motivate their friends, colleagues, and relatives.
Absolutely, because it's such a powerful thing and people need to know this. And especially when they talk about, the oppressions of slavery or Jim Crow have gone away and they don't realize, that they've just changed shape and they come in different forms now. And something that happened last week was about having New York rid itself of marijuana regulations in terms of just, everyday commercial recreational use, which seems to be big because that was something that was a low-level misdemeanor, but did interject people in the system. How do you see that potentially changing the landscape?
Well, what I hope we can do is by showing the large-scale nature, the fact of how many millions of people are impacted, the fact that it does so much harm These are not dangerous people for the most part. Yes, there are always some dangerous people, but those are not the ones with misdemeanors. These are not the ones that are threatening your life or my life or anybody's life. And we're spending tens of millions of dollars finding, chasing, arresting, and locking up people who never should be part of the system. And with the district attorneys and with local jurisdiction, I think there's real options and real possibilities that we can change this. And that's an exciting idea. That's something that motivates and energizes many of us.
Absolutely, and me as well. So can you tell us, Mr. Greenwald, where can people find Racially Charged, America's Misdemeanor Problem?
They can go to bravenewfilms.org on our website. They can go to our Facebook page. They can follow me on Twitter. They can go to Instagram. They can go to TikTok. You go someplace and we will have the film there or parts of the film. Some people 30 minutes is too long. There's 30 seconds, there's 1 minute, there's 2 minutes. The important thing is spreading the message as widely as possible, and everybody can do something.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Adrienne.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.